This day in sports history. It's July 3rd, and on this day in 1993, Steffi Graf won her third straight Wimbledon singles title. She was the undisputed queen of the court. But it was what her opponent did after this match that had people talking. So at this point, Graf was the number one player in the world after Monica Seles had withdrawn from tournaments after being stabbed earlier in the year by a crazed fan of Graf. She was the two-time defending Wimbledon champion, but she was in trouble in the third set, down 4-1 to Jana Novotna. Novotna was the 8th seed and advanced to the final with wins over 4th-seeded Gabriela Sabatini in the quarters and the 2-seed Martina Navratilova in the semis. Novotna just needed to hold serve to win her first Grand Slam tournament. She'd been close enough to sniff it in the past. She'd played in the French Open semis in 1990 and lost in the Australian Open final in 91 to Seles. Now, to get to that final 2.5 years prior, she'd knocked off Graf in the quarterfinals in a grueling 3-setter. So here she was against Graf in the Wimbledon final, serving for game point to go up 5-1. And that's when things started to fall apart. She double faulted, missed a volley, and then put an overhead lob into the net to lose 3 straight points. Not a huge problem. She was still up 4-2 in the third and had already broken Graf's serve twice in the set. She just needed to break Graf again and then serve for the match. Unfortunately for Novotna, there would be no more breaks. Instead, it was Graf who held serve and then broke Novotna twice more to win the final 5 games and take the third and final set 6-4. It was another close call, near miss for the Czechoslovakian Novotna, and the manner in which she let it slip away was tough to deal with. Now, as is traditional at Wimbledon, the Royals bestow the winners and runner-up trophies. And when the Duchess of Kent told Novotna that one day she would win Wimbledon, well, Novotna started sobbing. In a rare showcase of emotion by the royal family, the Duchess pulled her in close and consoled her with a hug. It took 4 years for Novotna to get back to the Wimbledon final, but she lost again, this time to Martina Hingis. And finally, in 1998, Novotna's perseverance paid off, returning to the final again, and this time winning, beating Natalie Tauziat to finally claim the Wimbledon title. The Duchess was there once again after that triumph and said, "See, I told you you'd win it all one day." This episode is brought to you by the Sterling Soap Company. Sterling Soap is 100% natural, and with a variety of bath soaps, shave soaps, beard balm, lotions, cologne, and many more personal care products in a large variety of scents, you're sure to find something that's perfect for you or that special someone in your life. Check them out at sterlingsoap.com. On this day in 1954, it was another inspiring sports story involving a female athlete. This time, Babe Didrikson Zaharias conquered the Women's U.S. Open, becoming an inspiration to people battling cancer all over the world. Now, Zaharias had been an All-American basketball player for her AAU team back in the early 30s. She was an Olympian in 1932, a barnstorming multi-sport athlete during the Great Depression, and then became one of the best women golfers in the world. She was the most recognizable female athlete in the first half of the 20th century, and after she won the U.S. Open on this day in 1954, she was recognized as the greatest female athlete of all time. Now, I get it, we are 70 years removed from this day, and a lot has happened in the world of sports and women's athletics in particular since then, but she was truly unique. On this day, the women were playing the final 36 holes of the U.S. Open at Salem Country Club in Peabody, Massachusetts. She started the day with an 8-shot advantage over her nearest competitor, and the way she had been playing, it was like we talked about with Tiger at the U.S. Open in 2000. The only question was, how many was she going to win by? But keep in mind a couple of things. First, Babe had been diagnosed with colon cancer in April 1953 after winning her own tournament. She had been through treatment and surgery, and she was told that she would never play competitive golf ever again. But she defied that prognosis and did return to the women's tour, but not without complications. She was playing this tournament with a colostomy bag, And second, as I've talked about with the U.S. Open at this point, the final day for both the men and the women was a 36-hole marathon. Her morning round was a 1/73, and it was the best score of the early 18. In the afternoon, Zaharias shot 75, but everybody else also struggled with the conditions, and her 4-round total of 291 was 12 shots better than anybody else in the field. After collecting her 3rd U.S. Open trophy and the 10th major trophy of her career, she addressed the crowd with these remarks.
I don't like to keep bringing up this hospital deal of mine, but I was laying there in room 201 at the Hotel Du Hospital, and these reports were going out about that I never play championship or tournament golf again. And I laid in the bed and I says, "Please, God, let me play again." And he answered my prayer.
She became an inspiration to many others who were battling cancer and became an advocate for cancer awareness. This was the last major tournament win for her. Sadly, the cancer returned in 1955, and pain in her lower back made it impossible for her to play. She died in September 1956 at the age of 45. On this day in 1966, it was a once-in-a-lifetime performance for a pitcher that, so far, has not been equaled. Tony Cloninger was pitching for the Atlanta Braves against the San Francisco Giants in Candlestick Park on this day. The Braves jumped on the Giants in the first inning, plating 7 runs, 4 of those coming off the bat of Cloninger, who belted the first of his 2 grand slams in this game. The Braves' big inning sent starter Bob Priddy to the showers early, and when Cloninger came to the plate in the 4th with the bases loaded once more, he took Ray Sadecki's pitch over the right field fence for his second 4-bag, 4 RBI shot of the day. He had a single later in the game that plated another for a 9 RBI day. It was the ultimate pitcher helping himself kind of game. On the mound, Cloninger pitched a complete game, spraying 7 hits. He struck out 5 and allowed 3 runs in a 17-3 Braves win. Cloninger's feat of a pitcher hitting 2 grand slams in the same game stands alone. He did hit a pair of solo shots in a game earlier that season, and he finished the year with 5 homers. On this day in 1968, NFL players went on strike, and though it only lasted a few days, it did lead to the first collective bargaining agreement. To get to this point actually started years earlier when the players began to organize in 1956, but they didn't actually form a union until January of '68. At this point, the NFL and AFL had merged, and the players lost the ability to switch leagues to negotiate bigger salaries, and most were unhappy with the compensation. Negotiations for a higher base salary, better pension, and benefits stalled, and so on this day, they decided to strike. The owners retaliated by announcing a lockout. The 2 sides eventually came back to the table, and after 11 days, they were able to work out the first collective bargaining agreement in the NFL. Minimum salaries for rookies were set at $9,000, veterans' minimum was $10,000, and league revenue was set aside for player pensions when they retired. While the agreement was signed, a lot of the players were still unhappy with the terms. This CBA lasted 2 years, when again on this day in 1970, the players went on strike again with similar demands. That labor stoppage only lasted 4 days. Minimum salaries for rookies and veterans were increased, along with a new independent arbitration board set up to take players' injury grievances out of the commissioner's office. In essence, what happened on this day in 1968 gave players a much stronger voice in the room when it came to labor situations in the game. The current CBA for the NFL goes until 2030, so no labor stoppages are on the current horizon. And on this day in 2001, the NBA experiment in Vancouver came to an end when the league announced that the Grizzlies were officially moving to Memphis. The team had only been in Vancouver for 6 seasons, and fan support had been lacking nearly from the start. As the years went by, the team never got better. They finished last in 5 of 6 seasons north of the border, never winning more than a third of their games, and they struggled to draw a marketable player to the franchise to build a team around. Their first draft pick was Bryant Big Country Reeves, but he wasn't a guy who was going to energize your fan base. When Steve Francis was drafted in the '99 draft, he was not happy about playing in Vancouver. That thought was solidified in the Vancouver airport after the draft when Francis was traveling with his brother and a friend. A ticketing agent stopped Francis's agent and asked if those guys were a rap group. Francis's demand to be traded resulted in the largest deal at the time that included 11 players and 3 teams that sent Francis to Houston. For a lot of folks, that sealed the fate of the franchise. And time now for today's That's Got Nothing to Do with Sports fun fact. If you are a fan of the Godfather movies, then you probably remember the famous scene when Don Corleone welcomes guests into his office to hear their pleas for help. Well, when Vito is hearing the plea from Bonacera to kill the man who injured his daughter, there's a cat in Marlon Brando's lap. Now, that cat was not originally part of the scene. Instead, Francis Ford Coppola found a stray cat wandering around the set. He picked it up and handed it to Brando prior to shooting it. The scene, not the cat. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.